welcome to Wildly Curious, a podcast that tells you everything you need to know about nature and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Laura.
And I'm Katy, and today we're going to be talking about how ADHD's unique challenges and strengths can be reframed to reveal that power and potential within.
Woo! And the sciencey stuff behind the ADHD.
Yes. Which we've done an episode a while ago, which I didn't realize how long ago it was, but we did one on
it was
brains.
like more than a year. Or was it a year or 2 years now?
2 years. 2 years ago now.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it was that long.
Right?
That was such a good episode that I think people really liked. I think because of, one, a lot of listeners, a lot of curious people are probably ADHD.
Right.
and that we were very vulnerable talking about, because it wasn't just ADHD. We covered very broadly the neuroscience behind ADHD and OCD. But we figured let's dive deeper, because I think that people really want to hear about stuff like this.
Yeah. And it's just, I think because you're not going to talk so naturally about this kind of stuff, it makes it fun too.
Yeah.
So, well,
okay.
So we're going to briefly introduce it, and then we're going to break it down into the two types. So everybody knows that there's the inattentive and then the hyperactive. Technically there's three because they're combined type. So I was diagnosed with ADHD as a little kid, and very quickly, in hindsight now, back then they called it ADHD or ADD.
Right. It was one or the other.
Yeah, it was one or the other. I have both because God decided, just make her extra spicy and just extra spunky. So let's just give her all the struggles that come with this. So we're going to break down the two, and then combined type is just literally you have both. And then we're going to talk about the different diagnostic criteria that fall under each that are pretty generalized, and then just explore what's happening in the brain as to why those things are the way that they are, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I can give a brief overview of ADHD and what it is. So you guys know it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which there's a lot of beef with that name because it's not really a deficit of anything. It's just part dopamine, serotonin. There's different chemicals within your brain. And basically with ADHD, those chemicals don't flow from one part to your brain to another as it should. It's
not necessarily that you don't even have enough. It's that you might not have enough transmitter. You might not have enough little, what am I saying? The little thingamabobs that even grab the transmitters.
Correct. Yeah. It just doesn't flow the right way to the right places. So there's enough in it. It can just get backlogged a bit in one area before it goes to another area. And a lot of the diagnostic criteria is you'll see a lot of overlap between like impulsivity, memory issues, and it's because all those key areas are like multiple parts of your brain that handle all those things are pretty much they handle the same things again and again, which is why there's a lot of overlap between.
Yeah, and even with most people, not everyone is combined type, but most people have at least, they dabble to a lesser degree in both areas.
Yeah, and so to be actually diagnosed with ADHD, it has to be it bugs me that whenever people are like, oh, everybody's a little ADHD. Okay, yes, but yes, everybody at one point or another is going to have a little bit of these symptoms. But for somebody who actually has ADHD, these things become so big that it impairs their day-to-day life. It has a hit on their day-to-day life to make it difficult. And if you want to look up
like the exact, if you really are like, I might have ADHD and we don't want to just diagnose ourselves with this. Yeah. Like there are some hit things. For example, you have to be diagnosed with one of those types. Only one of the specifications says that you have to have 6 or more of the following symptoms persistent for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts social and academic/occupational activities. So yeah, like it's not just, okay, one thing here and there no, we're talking like multiple symptoms for a long period of time that are directly impacting your life.
Yeah. And sometimes debilitating, impacting, for sure.
Yeah.
And so because Laura and I are both women, if you can't guess by our names, for women, unfortunately, hormones play a huge part in this too. And symptoms can definitely get better and worse every month, depending on where you are in your cycle, depending on where you are in your life. And that just adds extra suckiness to it. So we're going to go into the different diagnostic criteria, and it is going to have a positive spin on this. My big beef with all of this normally is that whenever you look at the diagnostic criteria, it's always focusing on the negatives. What makes it difficult? What makes it the quote unquote mental disorder? All right.
Right.
But it has so many good positive perks to it that if we just start to, those who do have ADHD, or if you're listening out there, you don't have ADHD, but you know somebody who does, start to reframe your mind and how you're looking at this, because it does have perks. And especially if you're a spouse, because spouses a lot of times struggle. If you're neurotypical and you don't have ADHD or anything else, it can be very challenging to understand where we're coming from with things. But there are so many freaking good benefits that if you just learn to lean into the benefits side of it and be curious and more helpful and understanding and patient about the things that like don't make sense, there's so many perks, especially as a spouse and a partner, that like pay off to you that if you just know what to lean into and what to help understand, it just, it has so many great benefits. So
right, because Katy and I would be the first to tell you there are cons.
Oh yeah.
There is detriment.
Yeah.
But it's all about how can you harness that? Can you develop, well, no, you can't develop habits because you're ADHD. Yeah. Can you develop schedules that help you? You know what I mean? Workarounds, essentially. We're always developing workarounds.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So Laura's going to go over inattentive, and then I'm going to go over hyperactive. So
yeah. And we'll chime in with each other and like how this is affecting us too.
Yeah.
So inattentive is just, like Katy was saying in the beginning, is one of the 3 types of ADHD, and it's what used to be called, back when I was diagnosed, ADD. Yeah. Like in the early 2000s. So to have it, you have to have 6 or more of the following symptoms that we're going to talk about. They're kind of lumped into 5 big categories, but there are 9 symptoms. You have to have 6 of them. And real quick, also before we get started, so, Katy was saying a little bit about the neurotransmitter stuff, but I know we talked about this in our first ADHD episode, which was that ADHD affects several areas of the brain, including the frontal cortex, limbic system, basal ganglia, and reticular activating system. And it is the problems transmitting signals. And depending on what area of the brain is and what transmitters is going to be more or less like what your symptoms. So somebody who is inattentive is having different problem areas for the most part than somebody who's impulsive. Like impulsive is going to be more of like your basal ganglia and stuff, whereas your frontal cortex is a lot of like your organization and focus and things like that.
Yeah, I always say that if you know somebody, for the most part, no 2 people with ADHD have all the same symptoms. ADHD is more of, okay, here's this grouping, this big bowl of symptoms, and then everybody just like reaches in and grabs out some random ones.
Let's make it fun.
Yeah.
A cocktail of symptoms.
Right? So they just reach in and they pull some out, and that's what they're born with, is just like the randomness of it.
Yeah, because it's all that brain chemistry.
Yep.
Speaking of which, one of the first grouping of symptoms is difficulty sustaining attention. And that's 3 symptoms. 1, you often have difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities, like focus during lectures, conversations, things like that. You often avoid or just dislike tasks that require sustained mental effort, homework if you're a kid, or if you're an adult, reports, forms, lengthy papers. And 3, you often fail to give close attention to detail, which makes you have careless mistakes in work, schoolwork, or other activities. So what's happening in your brain that is causing this difficulty sustaining attention? It's the problem for all of us with ADHD, and it's that dopamine. We were saying it's not even necessarily that you don't have a lot of dopamine in your brain. You might have just the right amount of dopamine, but maybe your little uptake thingamabobs between your neurons are a little bit weird, so they're not sucking up the dopamine like they should be. But in general, that is causing you to have low dopamine in certain areas of your brain, which makes it hard to stay focused, leading to a tendency to zone out or jump between tasks. Like, it is just hard to sustain that attention. So real quick for me, of the 3 mentioned above, I actually don't have that. I actually sometimes feel like I have the opposite problem, which is too much focus on an activity. I hyperfocus on things really easy. But I would say that for me, it's hard for me sometimes to sustain attention on conversations, which is terrible because I'm all about conversations.
Yeah.
But I definitely, and unless you've experienced, you might not know, but I can be listening to somebody, but only half of my brain is listening because all of a sudden the other half of my brain is wandering. Yes. Because I'm thinking about something else.
Yeah. Which is super helpful in things like interviews, because somebody can be asking a question and I can be talking while the other part of my brain is searching for the answer. Because I'm talking and just filling up space until the other half of my brain is like, oh no, this is what you actually need to say. So basically, I can bullshit until my brain catches up. And so it does have benefits of being like, all right, I'm just going to keep saying, until I find the right word.
Yeah.
Oh, ew, boom, insert the right word.
Yeah, so I would say my mind doesn't wander that much. Difficulty sustaining attention to me reminds me of someone who is like, oh yeah, I was like a real daydreamer. I'm not, really. I'm a doer. I'm a busy person.
Yeah.
So I make myself stay focused by staying busy. So I'm able to sustain the attention for very long periods of time. So this one is not me as much.
Yeah.
But of course, there are times.
It's me.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm combined typed. And so again, tell people like, imagine, ADHD. Yes, it's to actually have it. It's think of these things as everyone hits these spells occasionally. Just think of everything.
What's the majority of your time?
Yeah. Just think of it like as amplified. And so for me, like my brain can wander just any time. Like if it's not holding my attention, I'm off into something else. And it feels horrible whenever it is people, but in a conversation or something. But that's also why like school for me was so difficult, because the professor could be saying one thing, and as soon as something catches my intrigue, I'm like mentally going down that other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Which
is definitely the next big category, which is being easily distracted.
Yeah.
Because they're very similar, right?
Yeah.
Like sustaining attention.
A lot of these are very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
Easily distracted immediately leads you to, well, I can't pay attention anymore because now I'm distracted.
Yeah.
Now, the next grouping is easily distracted, and there's 2 symptoms in here. 1, often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Mind seems elsewhere, even in the absence of any obvious distraction. That's me. And 2 is often easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. So for older, like adults, this doesn't have to actually be external stimuli, right? That was extraneous. That's extra.
Yeah,
this can be that, but it can just be your own brain intrusive thoughts, which is 100% me.
Yeah.
I am easily distracted by external stimuli. I am a squirrel person, literally.
Yeah.
If I see a squirrel, I will stop a conversation and be like, holy crap, look, there's a squirrel.
Yeah.
But also intrusive thoughts constantly that have nothing to do with what I'm doing.
Nope.
This is where people, I feel like on TikTok, it's really come out. People with ADHD and neurotypical people are discovering one another, because the intrusive thoughts of ADHD of you're just cooking in the kitchen, and then intrusive thought of, what would be weird is if, and then it's just off on a thing.
Yes.
It's being distracted by my own thoughts of other things or just crazy things.
Yeah.
Sometimes related and sometimes not. So both of those, hardcore for me. So in your brain, what's happening? Your brain at that moment has a heightened sensitivity to any kind of stimuli, making it hard to filter out your distractions. So this is a sensory issue that your brain can't decide what's most important. It's taking in everything.
Yep.
And so you're just like, whatever, take it as it comes. So I'm not able to be like, take away that thought, take away that thought. I'll be like, let's explore it.
Yeah, because remember, if your brain not hitting enough dopamine, we are always going to pick the path that is going to give us the dopamine. So it's all about positive reinforcement, the reward. Constantly about the reward.
And it's about the other one, it's always hand in hand. It's dopamine and norepinephrine.
Oh, yeah.
It's like chasing the good thoughts, or not even good thoughts. Like you might accidentally go down a bad one, but you're still like, yeah. So both of those for me, for sure. Okay, forgetfulness. Also worse with age.
My memory just sucks. This is probably one of my worst. This and executive function is probably 2 of my worst, or I shouldn't say worst ones, because there's definitely ones that are more prevalent for me. I would say this is probably one of the most ones that interrupt my day to day, is just straight up forgetfulness.
So this is a double-edged sword for me, or not a double-edged sword, because that's like both negative things. Mine's it's a one or the other. Okay. So with this one, the criteria is 2 things. 1 is often forgetful in daily activities, like doing chores, running errands, returning calls, paying bills, keeping appointments. And 2, often loses things necessary for tasks, like school materials, books, keys, wallets, paper. So memory for me, my memory, I was great at school because I am able to retain information like nobody's business and regurgitate said information. Where I get forgetful is all of what they were just saying. I am notorious for losing my keys.
Yeah.
I have a tile on my keychain because I've lost them multiple times. In high school, I was constantly losing my locker key.
Yeah.
I lose things a lot. I can't keep track of things.
Yeah.
Forgotten.
So let me ask you this though, about you said about how you were so good in school, but do you feel like you were so good in school because it interests you?
No, because I'm even able to retain, I can regurgitate math formulas.
Okay.
My memory, so I'm good with facts.
Yeah.
And I suppose as an interpreter, I'm like, oh, it's because I'm like a trivia, I can remember those facts.
Mm-hmm.
So the school system is good for people like me who can retain facts, because that's what this is all. Our school education system is about memorization.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually matter if you know the why.
Correct. That's where
is the what.
That's where my struggle is because for me to remember, I have to know the why. It has to make sense for me.
Yes. And it does. I'll retain the information longer, but I can keep on to things for short term.
Yeah.
But the things I can't remember, it's hard for me. Normal life skills, terribly forgetful.
Yeah. It also doesn't help. So there's a lot that goes along with ADHD that's very common for ADHD people that isn't a diagnostic. And one of those is time blindness. Time, and I've explained it to so many people. So time is more of we have to feel time. And so if I saw you a week ago, that really feels like it's been 3-4 weeks ago. And so we have no concept of, okay, I have to pay the bill once a month. That feels like such a long period.
Right. I can't retain that urgency for that long.
Oh my gosh.
My brain is like, it's not important. Chuck that.
It's gone.
Which is so crazy because I am regularly getting other things that I'm thinking about. I just can't sustain the thought for very long.
Yeah, no,
like it can
gone.
be moments to days, but it will go away.
Yeah.
But I could tell you who was in some movie.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant information, but that my brain was like, I'm going to put that one away.
Yeah.
But you're not going to remember to go to the dentist next week.
Yeah, right.
Like, what the heck? That's really like a weird brain thing, but 100% that's me.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more categories. Poor organization. This only has the one really symptom, which is often has difficulty organizing tasks and activities. For example, difficulty managing sequential tasks, difficulty keeping materials and belongings in order, messy, disorganized work, has poor time management, and fails to meet deadlines. This is like a personal attack. All the things. All of them.
This one's tough to deal with, I think, because it makes it sound so horribly negative. Because for me, I need organization to survive, but I'm also horrible at being organized.
Yeah. Organizing my time is very hard.
Yeah.
Because one, it's hard for me to prioritize tasks.
Yes.
It is hard for me to do that first. Once I prioritize the tasks, without fail, I will tell you it will take me an hour, but it will actually take me 2 hours.
Yes. No concept.
There's no concept of judgment of time.
Yeah. Again, it's the time blindness.
You'd think you could do it enough times that you'd be like, I know that's going to take me this long. No, Laura. Yeah. No.
It's going to be significantly longer.
Significantly. If I say I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, it will be 10.
Because I don't think we've ever talked about this, but I had the recent revelation. I watched a video that was talking, and I think I sent it to you, that said about how people with ADHD cannot form habits. And I did not realiuse that
I didn't either until was it this past year?
I sent you something and we were like, oh my God, I did not realize that when somebody who's neurotypical go through those steps of habits, that is what a habit is without thought.
That was right. When I heard that, I was like, there's no way that this is possible.
No.
I actually went in and talked to people like at work and I was like, you need to tell me right now because I don't believe this is true.
I need you to explain this to me.
You do things on autopilot. What are you talking about?
Yes.
What are you talking about?
I have an SOP. So for my quote unquote, what I've thought was a habit my whole life is actually like an SOP in my head.
1,000%.
Step by step, I'm like, okay, I have to check the locks. Go check the top lock, the bottom lock. Go check this. And so it's an SOP. So for me, the habit is to click on the switch that turns on that SOP every night, or like when I'm leaving the apartment. But
Lord forbid you don't click on the SOP at the right time.
Oh my God.
Because then my SOP in the morning is to get up, take pills. But then if I am late doing that,
it's
I question my own brain of like, did I do it?
Because I'm normally
so in this habit.
Yes.
Now I've like glitched myself.
Yes. Because you do forget, because you know you're forgetful. And that's my biggest thing is like.
And so I no longer, it's hard to trust yourself when you know you're so forgetful.
Because you know you're forgetful, because you have done these things. You have left the curling iron plugged in. You have left the blow dryer. And clearly, if you leave it plugged in this time, it's going to burn everything down, and people are going to die.
Which is why this all leads to anxiety. ADHD can lead to such severe anxiety.
Oh my God, yeah.
Plus the comorbidity of having an anxiety disorder anyway.
Yeah, or depression,
it's just leading to all of this.
Hold on. Let's pause for 1 second. So if you guys have never heard, there's a lot of comorbid disorders that you can have with it. There are a list of things, and the top 3, I believe, are anxiety, depression, and dyslexia, are like the top 3 that somebody has typically with ADHD.
And then there's there's so many other ones really too.
Yeah.
But those are the big ones.
For me, it's dyscalculia. It's the math of dyslexia, essentially. So I just wanted to insert like what comorbidity is.
Yeah. Where in our last episode, we were talking about how my comorbidity is an anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
So again, it's a cocktail, not even just of ADHD, but
I just imagine somebody with a shaker mixing at a drink, and it's just like all these symptoms in there. Just like,
that's you. Yeah. God.
Yeah. Right. Let's make this one extra fun.
At a wet bar up there.
with all like the different mental disorders written behind him and all the different bottles and stuff, and he's just there pouring stuff in, shaking it all up, seeing what you get.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, that organization, it really hits hard, which is also and the habit thing, which leads to the executive dysfunction, which is not really again is not a diagnostic criteria, but is very much like poor organization, and the next one, which is difficulty following through on tasks. This is not follow through. I'm talking executive dysfunction is just starting.
Yeah, it's hitting the start button. Yeah.
Starting is
which
so
is my
hard.
hardest. Which is my hard. This and then the forgetfulness. Yes. These are my 2 ones that.
Executive dysfunction is my hardest one.
It just debilitates you
because
sometimes.
We don't have habits. So like Katie was saying, there's an SOP, and sometimes those SOPs, guys, are so freaking long.
Yes,
I can't do it.
Yeah,
like I was trying to explain,
it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah. So for example, my SOP for bedtime, right, would be, all right, I'm laying on the couch, I'm on my phone. Now, next steps would be, I have to get up, I have to lock the front door, then I gotta go upstairs, and I gotta check on Laura, I have to brush my teeth, I have to get into pajamas, I have to set my alarm, and then there's like 7 steps. It's not just get up, go to bed on autopilot. I consciously make each decision.
Yes. And that's with most chores.
Right.
That's with washing the dishes and everything.
Exactly. You see every step. It's not just load the dishwasher. No. You have to rinse all those dishes, right? Putting them in the dishwasher, remembering to put the soap in. There's so many steps to everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, F that, I'm going to lay on the couch, which only exacerbates the problem.
Yeah.
It's escapism at its worst because you haven't started the task.
ADHD symptoms are literally our own worst enemies because everything, and that goes back to the organization that for me, I thrive in having a very clean, organized place. But I'm horrible at staying organized. And so again, for me, that's where the struggle comes in is I need one thing to do something else. And so it's with the SOP, with the executive dysfunction, like I know I need to clean my place because I know I will feel better. I know I will function better because I feel better whenever I don't have clutter around me because there's enough clutter in my head. But that switch to turn it on and off, like to just take that first step can be so overwhelming sometimes that like it gets to a point where, and I've done this where my apartment has been like not dirty because I keep it clean, but it's been so disorganized.
Again, right. You're stepping, I mean, I grew up as a kid in my own rooms. I made paths, literal paths.
Yeah. Because
it was too overwhelming. And so as a kid, like what this looked like for me as a kid was time to clean your room, put it off. And then finally, when my parents were like, you have to worry about this yourself. It is time to clean your room. The only way for me to do that and prioritize those tasks was to literally take all the loose things from all around my room and put them in a pile in the middle of the floor.
Yep.
Because that was the only way I could address everything.
So Luke and I have what we call our ADHD cart. And it's literally a little cart on wheels. And because we have an open floor plan. And so everything that isn't where it's supposed to go, we put on the cart.
And then you just take it where it needs to go.
Yeah, and then we push that cart around and we push and take it from room to room to put it away. And
because that's the only way to do it. And it just sucks, though, because sometimes you get sucked in on a side project.
Oh.
And you have to avoid it at all costs.
We're amazing at side quests. Anybody with ADHD is like, let me go chase this dopamine.
Because you're cleaning and then you go to this room and then you realize that there's this task to do there. And that might actually make you feel better and more productive. And like, the thing is, it's not.
I clean like a Roomba.
The clutter isn't, definitely. I definitely would do better with less clutter. Yeah. But for me, it's the task, like if I need to feel productive. Yeah. I need to feel productive. Whatever that looks like. Yeah. Whether it's a task at work or at home, that productivity makes me get that dopamine. So if it does mean cleaning, I'm going to clean here so hard, it's going to be like, I need to do 5 rooms today. And if I don't do 5 rooms, I'm going to feel like I got nothing done.
Oh, yeah. We set such unrealistic goals for ourselves. Yeah. Because, I mean, to be fair, we know we could potentially get there. Do we know? But because because again, it's the time management, the time blindness, the ability to be able to predict how long something takes us.
Just like the other day, I went on a giant cleaning spree, which I don't do very much anymore because I can't with Laura around. Yeah. But I love a good cleaning spree in general, or like running errands, anything that can be like check, 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 check. Yeah. Then I feel like a powerhouse and invincible, and that's so good for me. But Justin was like, hey, like you've done a lot today. Why don't you just stop now? And I said, oh no, Justin.
Can't.
Because here's the thing. If I don't get this all done today, I might not actually do laundry for the next 2 weeks. Yes. So today's the day. Yeah. Today is the day. I am riding this high until bedtime. Yes. And like, it is not like it is burnout. But it's I am also harnessing the times that I know I can actually do this.
I wouldn't say it's burnout. And that's what I say, like with chores with me all the time is, okay, for me to get the laundry done, I have to have enough time to be able to do the laundry, dry it, and fold it and clean it, put it away.
Oh yeah, I got piles of unfolded laundry around this place.
If I am feeling, again, a lot of with ADHD is like, if you're feeling up to it, do it then and there. Because
if you wait,
it's not going to happen.
When that switch turns on, you jump on it.
Yeah.
It's like a unicorn has come through your house, and you must grab it right then, because if not, that unicorn might not come around for like another month.
Yes, and you just have to jump on.
Insane.
Yes,
like it's insane.
Yes.
All right, last thing for me. Difficulty following through on tasks. This has the one symptom, often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. For example, start tasks but quickly loses focus and is easily sidetracked.
Which is what we were talking about with the cleaning and
Amen,
and
side
everything.
quest.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily projects. I pride myself, so I consider myself like a completionist in a lot of ways, because I'm also a perfectionist, which is another thing with ADHD, because you're like, I need to feel good. My feel good is I have to do it 100%. There is no less, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not even going to start something unless I'm good at it. Like for me, that's why I'm not a big sports person, because if I don't think I'm going to win, then I'm not even going to try. I need to do it, and I need to do it well. I do projects, and I will follow through if it kills me.
Yeah.
Right? I just might be on death's door when it's finished because I've stayed up. I will do it, but I might not stick with it. I get sidetracked on side quests and rabbit holes.
Oh my gosh.
And then I am a hobby jumper. So, it's the following through on things like hobbies. I am never going to be like a lifelong violinist. I might learn to dabble on the violin, and then I'm going to hop. Oops, sorry.
I've had so many random hobbies that people are like, what do you like to do in your spare time? What haven't I done in my spare time? Like everything. I've tried everything.
Which again makes you like an amazing project person.
Right.
Because something crazy ends up happening and you're like, actually, weirdly enough, I have experience with this. Just and like the weirdest things too, right? Because I actually think that I thrive off of that novelty. The something that not anybody else is really into, so I'm gonna be really into it.
Yeah.
Cross stitching in high school. Yeah. Who's doing cross stitching or sewing like hardcore? I got a sewing machine and I was like, I'm gonna sew stuffed animals and dresses and sweaters and then immediately skip to something completely different, like the Native American flute.
I was going to say, if you go back and listen to our very first episode when we talk about Zuganru and mine and Laura's band and how funny we thought that was at the time. And we're like, we're going to do this. We're going to panhandle because we're poor.
For like 2 months. It was great. We were in it. And then
And again, the fact that we took a break for the podcast for a bit, but the fact that this is still ongoing blows my mind.
Yeah, this is for sure the longest hobby.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, but and I'm very much the same way. Like following through on tasks. Thankfully, there's no like completion of hobbies. Like you either do something or you don't. You know what I mean? Like there's no completion
because it might kill me.
Yes. Yeah, because
like on video games, I'm the person that plays like that video game until it is done and I will never come back.
Yes. Like I had the flu.
Or at least not years.
I had the flu one weekend and I beat Red Dead Redemption 2.
Right. And you got all the achievement. Like everything. I need the achievements. Like the whole video game system is like terrible and no wonder it's so addictive for people with ADHD because it's like hitting all those things.
Rewards.
Like, ooh, an achievement.
Yeah.
You know, like.
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm
just
doing great.
Keeps hitting those. Yeah. All right.
And that's inattentive. So I definitely had, I think I counted 6. So 5 or 6 is what I had. And you have to have at least 6 to be just one. Yeah. You have to have 5 in each to be both.
Yeah.
So I think I'm actually combined as well, but that didn't exist when I got diagnosed.
Yeah. I'm so combined type. I'm so ADHD. And I think that said this in the Brains episode too, where whenever I was seeing the new psychiatrist, and thankfully, I mean, they do their due diligence and make sure that it is ADHD. It's not something else. They give you
right. You have not just self-diagnosed yourself. You don't just come in saying, I have this, and this, and this. I think I have ADHD. And when they're like, no, we're going to go down some things.
We're going to make sure it's not bipolar, not something that was overlooked before. And so they give you all these kinds of different tests. And I was so ADHD that it was showing up on my test for bipolar. Katie, you're not bipolar whatsoever. However, we can tell by your answers that you're ADHD. And thankfully, my psychiatrist, she is so freaking amazing.
Which is really interesting that you say that because I know somebody, I'm not going to say who, but I know somebody that is so ADHD that they also were diagnosed with bipolar, but they are not bipolar.
Yeah.
And I know it's because they're so ADHD. The medicine didn't do anything. They don't have classic bipolar symptoms, but when they tested for things, I'm sure it's that.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to go then cover the hyperactivity, impulsivity criteria side of things.
Oh, real quick, one more last thing before you get started. So mine has classically been, like most women have, if diagnosed,
inattentive.
Are diagnosed with inattentive.
Yeah.
Now, not exclusively, but it seems to be that it's more women.
100%. Oh, yeah, 100%. And that's why it was so overlooked and diagnosed for women whenever we were little.
Yes, we were literally called, I just watched a video how about we were considered like the forgotten generation with hyperactivity because it does not, what Katie's going to go through presents itself differently in men and women.
Yeah.
Whereas inattentive is pretty across the board. Yeah. Even men are like, oh, if you're forgetful, you're forgetful.
Yeah.
It's not. Anyway, go ahead.
And so back in the day, I mean, these were the symptoms whenever people said, oh, you have ADHD. Like these were the things that you were like, whoop, ADHD. The inattentive was frequently overlooked altogether. I was diagnosed as a kid. I wasn't medicated, but I was diagnosed as a kid because I was combined type, because my impulse or hyperactivity, it was prevalent even for
because
for
inattentive, you might have just been considered lazy or a daydreamer.
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And I was both. So I was
a lazy hyper daydreamer.
Yeah, lazy hyper daydreamer.
Man, that Katie's the worst kid.
Right. But that brings up another thing that goes outside the diagnostic criteria. Like we've laughed about a lot of things, and a lot of it too. It hurts because it's true because of how society is and how we're looked at and stuff. But there's a fact out there that says that kids with ADHD, by the time they're 12, are told 20,000 negative things about themselves, or how they think, how they feel is wrong by the time that they're 12. All right. So if you figure that time between 3 to 4 years old, when you actually start to form memories and start to really comprehend things, to 20,000 times. All right. That works out to be 7-9 times a day.
That's nuts.
You were told that as a kid with ADHD, how you think, how you feel is incorrect, is wrong.
And the way you act.
And how you act. It's all by the people that are closest to you. It's not your strangers. It's your parents. It's your teachers. It's those who are trusted adults that are telling you that something is wrong with you. And so that was
really
my
like
biggest
reframing that. Yeah, yes. Right. Because I try and be very conscious about saying that there are things that are inappropriate, right?
Yeah.
At least in today's standards, right?
Yeah.
It's inappropriate to, like what I struggled with, which was always interrupting and talking out of turn.
Yeah.
That is not appropriate. But that doesn't mean that there's that I'm wrong.
Yes.
That I'm wrong inside.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. You're not broken.
Reframing. Yes. It's the reframing of that as that is an inappropriate behavior, But that does not mean that you're a bad person.
Yes. And but again, whenever you're told growing up 7, 8, 9 times a day that you're wrong, that
you're too much.
Yes.
Can you just tone it down?
Yes.
Can you just,
and so
pay attention. Don't be so lazy.
That's why kids with ADHD learn to mask, and they learn to hide everything, because we're constantly told that we're wrong, that we're not going to achieve stuff. Whenever it is like reframing, that's like the biggest thing I've had to do with my son, is teaching him the positives, being very upfront to be like, buddy, this is going to be a struggle. He is so freaking smart. He's in advanced classes, but the classroom is not set up for a boy with ADHD.
No, it's not. It's not. And that it's going to be that you have to walk the fine line of be yourself. Yes. But know that there are appropriate responses to things.
Yeah. And he knows
which is very hard.
Yeah. And he knows like he can be himself with me. He knows he can do and say certain things with me where he can't at school, just because like he can interrupt me and I tell him that. I'm like, or on the way home, as soon as I pick him up, we have about a 40-minute drive with traffic and everything between his school and home. And he just and I'll tell him, be like, hey, are you just talking to talk, is what I ask him. Are you just talking to talk? And he goes, yes. Because that's what he just needs to info dump everything. And I'm like, okay, dude, go for it. And I just have to listen. Half the time I zone out because I have ADHD too.
And he's just talking he told you, he's just talking to talk.
Yeah. So it's finding that balance for both of us. And
I think that's too, like in the section you're about to talk about, the hyperactivity, that's where behaviors are considered inappropriate for society. Mm-hmm. Like you can people don't like people who are considered lazy and forgetful. You know what I mean? But
not an outward action.
Yes. Yeah. Right. The hyperactivity and the impulsivity is where
it's noticed.
It's noticed, and there truly are right and wrong ways to respond.
Yeah.
Just because you feel these big emotions doesn't mean you get to just explode on people, right? Yeah. Like it's navigating those things, realizing that you do have something to overcome.
Yeah.
But that you're not a bad person.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where we're really learning to do things better.
Yeah. And again, like with my son, I constantly tell him, and I've said it earlier in this episode too, that everything with ADHD it's amplified. So people might have some of it, but it's amplified tenfold, especially with emotions, and especially with kids in ADHD.
All kids are emotional toddlers. Yes. But it's harder for some people. It's so hard kids.
Because they're mad, they are mad. But like I've told Lucas, I was like, buddy, but here's the beauty of all of this. Yes, you might have big feelings, but you are probably going to love and care about people deeper than other people out there. So whenever you say you love your mom and dad, I know you mean that so deeply with his whole being of who he is. He loves his mom and dad. And
you get like overwhelmed by the feeling.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's so it's finding that balance. So let's go ahead and jump into the hyperactivity and impulsive criteria of it. So again, the hyperactive impulsivity, that's the first thing. So that's the key trait of ADHD that I personally know very well. And many of you who have probably experienced or have seen it in action is the impulsivity. Basically, when you have an ADHD brain, it has this interesting relationship with impulsive decisions. And it all starts with the prefrontal cortex, which in a sense is the brain's version of a brake pedal. The prefrontal cortex helps us to think before we act, to hit pause and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't text your ex at 2 a.m. or maybe don't buy that inflatable unicorn costume at 2 a.m. Like, because I've done it. But so it doesn't have that break to say, hey, let's pause and think about this before we do it or before we say it.
Which is the crazy part, because essentially we have never gone past adolescence in that way, right? Like we still, like that's the whole thing of as a kid, they don't have any impulse control. You start to learn impulse control, but it's still so hard for us to control those impulses.
Well, especially when you're an adult with adult money now. And so you can make those dreams a reality now. So it's way more fun. But for us with that prefrontal cortex, it's just not quite as active. So that brake pedal for people with ADHD just isn't quite as active.
Ready to be engaged. Yeah. The brake is not as easily engaged.
Right? Yeah. So it's like having a car that wants to go really fast, but with brakes that are only half working. And that means when a thought pops in our brain, it's way more tempting to just act on it basically immediately right now. There's way less of a natural filter than most neurotypical brains have.
And I think that this is where juxtaposition between what people have always thought of classically, like classically impulsive ADHD, like in the 90s for little boys was like my brother who would have the impulsive thought of, I wonder what would happen if I lit this thing on fire. And so he just did it, right? Yes. That's ADHD. Yeah. But impulsivity is also just interrupting.
Yes.
Like I'm constantly interrupting people.
And that's one of the ones I'm going to talk about too. Yeah, because I'm going to talk about because it's there. And all of this has to do with, again, like I was saying before, the reward system. It's all like that dopamine hit. And so that's that chemical that we will forever chase. It's what makes it feel good. It's what helps motivate us. And there's this constant craving for the dopamine because once we get a little bit of it, that's what makes us feel quote unquote normal. And
and the feeling that you're going to forget something, right?
Yes.
Like you got to act on it.
Yep.
We're just talking about grabbing that unicorn. Like you got, you know what I mean? Like.
Yep. So impulsivity, like we were saying, like whether it's impulsive actions, like buying everything in your Amazon cart randomly one night, or for me, like you decide to reorganize an entire garage at 11 o'clock at night. That's when you start it. I've reorganized a pantry at 2 a.m. because I've woken up in the middle of the night, can't sleep. I'm like, might as well do something. And so I go through the whole pantry because check all the cans and everything because I'm like, this feels good. I'm up, might as well do something. So it's not just about the reward though. It's about the waiting part that can be tricky. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in another one. But for a lot of us having to wait for anything, it's a huge struggle because waiting not only mentally feels like torture, but physically can feel like torture too. And I think that's what a lot of people overlook with ADHD is they're like, we'll just control it. We'll just do this. I don't think people understand that. Okay, for a second, let's just say if we could, we would. Like if we could just turn that switch on and just not say those things. But at the same time, a lot of these things, we physically feel it. Well, sorry, emotionally feel it, but we also physically, it is like a physical torture through our whole body.
You can feel it like my blood pressure will get high if I'm waiting too long in a grocery line.
Yeah.
Right? Or, like my impatience is intense.
Yes. Or like
I can physically feel like shaky.
I get chronic, really bad knots and tension in my back because constantly throughout the day, I realize like how tensed up I am just constantly. And that's because of stuff like this. If it's not the constant gratification, which does relax you, which does help you relax. A lot of people with ADHD have chronic muscle tension and they get knots in their back and things like that because of that. And there's a lot of really interesting science, which I'm like, I always just thought I had a really crappy back.
Plus also compounding the anxiety that comes from having ADHD, then it's like double. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the impulsive thing, because we can't wait, a lot of it has to do with, we would rather have, again, time blindness. We would rather have the small reward now than wait for the bigger reward down the road. We're neurotypicals, they know that payoff is coming. We don't know that payoff is coming. So we would rather have it right here and get this small dopamine. Again, I don't want to be like, think of a drug addict, but it's like that dopamine.
Well, that's why there is a lot of substance abuse problems with people with ADHD.
Yes. I think it's people with ADHD are 4 times more likely to have addiction issues than a neurotypical. And this is one of them. It's because it's a feel good. You're getting that dopamine hit when you're not getting it any other way. So you're self-medicating essentially. And that's unfortunate. But with the impulsivity, even if it's, I want to buy this now because it's that little dopamine hit now rather than, well, let me wait for a month to buy it. Because yes, I don't have the money right now in my budget. That would be the most sensible thing is to wait till, the next paycheck or wait till next month when I do have the money. Yeah, but it's going to feel really fun right now if I get it. And that's down the road and I'll deal with the bills down the road whenever they get here kind of thing. So it's a little bit more right now in those tiny rewards because we can't anticipate the big dopamine hit down the road.
Which is so interesting. So two stories. These are relevant. This and the executive dysfunction are my hardest. And I never growing up considered myself a very impulsive. I don't actually think most people would have considered me an impulsive person because I'm not thinking of the traditional, like putting myself in danger. Although I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie about some things. But on my report card in elementary school, I remember facts. I'm so good at remembering facts and memorization. But where I always did badly, in elementary school, they didn't care about this in high school. That was only academics. But in elementary school, they're grading on you those other things, those social skills. Needs improvement was always talking out of turn. 100%. Yeah. And so when I was in school and you got your cards pulled, okay, for talking out of turn or whatever, that eventually went to you had to sit on the black line in the gym and you lose your first 5 minutes of recess. The amount of times that I was on the black line, I never got to swing on the swings.
Yeah.
Because those were the first to be taken, which meant you had to be out that door. And so, and it wasn't even for doing anything malicious. Like, I was not a bad kid. I just could not keep my mouth shut. I couldn't do it.
That's what I was going to say, too, is school's not meant for people with ADHD because, okay, so you sitting on that line every single day, you've already heard 7 to 9 times a day what you're doing is wrong. Then you're adding in shame because once again, you're on that line. And so
and everyone knows it.
And everybody knows
bad
it.
Because I feel guilty. I didn't want to disappoint adults.
Yeah.
In fact, that's another thing. I loved hanging out with adults.
Yeah.
And I hated disappointing adults.
Yes.
And that did equate to, as an elementary kid, it didn't matter that much. Like, the shame of peers didn't matter that much to me.
It was
but then I got to middle school, and that's when I finally learned my lesson of not talking out, because I was shamed so badly in front of my 7th grade class by my English teacher.
Yeah.
He was like, what is wrong? It was like brutal.
Yeah.
And I stopped opening my mouth.
Yeah.
And that was what it took. It took that memory of being that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until college that I started to feel more comfortable talking to adults again.
Yes.
So that is my biggest struggle.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, I just went on this supervisor's management school thing, and I messaged Katy on my first day because we had to do these Clifton Strengths assessments, which is a cool way of thinking about your personality, which is your strengths. My main strength is communication, but under communication was, how can this get in the way of your success? And one of them was interrupting and verbally processing.
Yeah.
And that's when I texted Katy and I was like, my dominant personality trait is impulsive ADHD.
Yes.
That's who I am. And so being told to not talk so much, that's actually the most who I am.
Yes. And that goes back to
hearing that over and over again. Thankfully, my parents were never like, shut up. Like, my mom is like,
my mom was
all about,
my mom was.
But it could have been a lot worse for me.
No.
And then I felt so good, able to, I think it was last year, we had a field trip. And there was this little girl who could not stop talking out of turn. She was probably like in 3rd grade. And I was co-teaching, so I was just shadowing for a new person. So I wasn't actually necessary to be there. I just had to be there to watch our new staff person. So instead, I just sat down next to this little girl, and she wanted to hold my hand. And I was like, if you need to say something, just tell me. And she's like, because I actually can't stop. She told me,
girl, I hear you. I hear you.
I know. And it almost made me want to cry because I was like, I hear you. And so she whispered to me the entire time.
Yeah.
All relevant to what we were talking about.
Yeah, it's always relevant. Yeah.
It was just an info dump, a constant info dump, because she had to verbally process everything she was hearing.
Yes.
But our school systems can't support that because we don't have enough.
Yep. Yeah, you just can't do it.
But I was glad, at least for that one day, that I could give that kid what she needed.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to how everything that you're told as a kid, whenever you have ADHD, it is told that you're flawed, that you're not quote unquote normal, that you're not, that it takes oftentimes us until we're well into our adulthood before and you have to do, a really hard truth,
Well, right. Accepting. It's you get to the acceptance level.
Yeah. And it takes a while, and it takes a lot of, vulnerability on your own part to be like, okay, this is what I know I suck at. This is what I know I'm good at. And even now I practice like the vulnerability stuff with my employees. I'm just truthful with them. Now I'm like, listen, you guys know I'm horrible at this. So I either delegate it out, or I'm like, hey, you got to put that on if you're going to be out, I appreciate you telling me. That does nothing to me. Tell me.
I don't remember that either.
Put it on your calendar. And then whenever you're gone that day and somebody's like, hey, where are you? I'll be like, I don't know. And then I can look at your calendar and be like, oh, that's where you are. You did tell me. I remember that. But now I do. So let's then go on to the next one here, because I think, let me see here. I have restlessness is next. And then the next one after that is interrupting and talking excessively too. Because again, it's
which is again
just
an impulsive thing. Yeah.
So restlessness, if you got ADHD, you probably know this feeling too well. It's like your body has a mind of its own and it has to move. But what's actually going on there when we feel the need to fidget, wiggle, or sometimes practically like just bounce out of our chairs?
As I'm here in my lap. I've been doing this the whole time.
Right? Because you have to do something. So what's happening with ADHD is that the brain's always hunting for stimulation. Again, like a little kid on a sugar high at a theme park, we're constantly looking for that high. So there's a constant craving for something new, something interesting, something to do. And when there's not enough happening of that new something different to do, our bodies like just start making their own entertainment. I mean,
and it's crazy.
Yeah. Because
like
it has to do something. Yeah. So that's why you'll see a lot of us tapping our feet, bouncing a leg, playing with pens, doodling, doing something. And it's not that. And again, this goes back to how schools are not meant for kids, because how many times are you doodling in school and they're like, stop doing that. Pay attention. I am paying attention, but this is how I pay attention. I am an adult. I'm 36 years old and I have fidget toys on my desk. Now,
I do too.
They're professional looking. So this one that I love a lot is from Stimera, Stimara, and it's the Stim mags. It's like these little magnet post thingy-madoodles. And so it's, as I throw it on my laptop. And so it's not that they're not, I mean, I was gonna say, it's not that they don't look professional, as I have a 3D printed T-Rex that my son gave me.
Oh, yeah. We have some 3D printed ones.
Yeah. So we have some fun ones, but then there's another one. It's an Ono roller. And I'm showing these on camera. So if you go to our Patreon and support us, you'll be able to see what I'm showing here. So for me, and I have other ones that are at home, but for me, it's very much so like a weight thing.
Ooh, like mine's a texture thing.
Okay. Yeah. And so
like I like the squishy ones. Like that I can stretch and stretch
I'm
and
not,
stretch.
That does nothing. That does nothing. For me, it's a weight. And so I have this one that I wish I had it with me, but you hold it with two of your fingers. It's almost like a fidget spinner, like the kids ones, those little spinny things, but it's just one arm and it just spins. Yeah. Because it's feeling the weight distribution. Because I have another one here that's one of the cubes that's part of it, like the middle part of it spins.
Yeah. And you can feel it going around, wobbling.
Yeah. And so for me, it's like that weight that I can feel, because it's not for me, it's almost like the easiest way for me to explain is like your texture. For me, texture is almost an intrusive on like my sensory system. So it almost interrupts it. Whereas weight or like feeling like the movement almost feels like a wave. Like I'm just like sitting
evening
there.
Out.
Yeah. I'm just riding
like
a wave.
Like how sound works for some people.
Yeah. So,
oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, so that if I'm in a meeting and I know I have a big meeting coming up, especially like the Ono roller, that everybody's like, what the heck is that? Because it's not like, it doesn't look like a.
Does it just like flip flop in your hand? Yeah.
So it's just like constant, and so I can just have my hand like under the table in a meeting. Nobody's any of the wiser, and I'm just like boop, boop, boop. But that's how I pay attention.
Well, I think that this didn't really manifest that much for me until I became an adult, because school as a kid, there wasn't a lot of downtime, right? Yeah. Like you're not driving as a kid. You're not like I'm taking note. I took notes as a kid a lot. Mm-hmm. So like I'm writing. There was something physical. Yeah. And I would adjust. It's not that I couldn't stay in my chair. That was not it for me at all. But I do sit in weird positions in my chair.
Oh, that's another ADHD hallmark.
I am cross-legged right now in this chair, or like I'm on one foot and then I switch positions. But now that I'm an adult and there is so much more downtime in the car, I'm constantly picking my cuticles. And then if I'm watching TV, I'm also doing something else.
Yeah.
I try and make it something, I don't know, like something, not just on my phone. But and then for my entire life, and I don't know if this is a STEM thing or like or an ADHD thing, but when I get tired and to calm myself down, I move my leg back and forth like a in the
like rubbing your feet.
Yeah, only it's usually just one leg. And it's not a lot of movement. It's just like enough that your foot is getting constantly brushed
against
like
the other leg. Yeah, they call that cricketing.
Okay, so like mine's not even against. It could be in the couch cushions.
Yes,
it could be anywhere by itself.
Yeah. They call it cricketing. It's because of crickets, how they rub their legs together. Yeah, it's like cricketing.
So I do that, and I didn't know. So my dad does that to the point where every time my parents get a pair of sheets, there's one spot that wears out in the sheets. And my grandmother did that, unbeknownst to anybody else until later. You can see the direct path.
Yes.
We all did the same movement.
Yeah. ADHD is very hereditary, and I laugh all the time. So my uncle on my dad's side has the classic typical boy ADHD, didn't finish high school, had to get his GED, was kicked out of one school to the next because they just didn't know what to do with kids with ADHD back then. And so when I talk to my grandma about my symptoms or what I'm doing now differently with Luke, first of all, she always says how proud of me she is. One, she's my grandma, but two, she genuinely means it because she had a kid with
better.
Yeah, she had a kid with ADHD and how much more we know, but I'll be explaining my own symptoms to her and she'll be like, "Oh yeah, no, that totally makes sense." And I'm so badly. Sweet Ruth, who does listen to our podcast a lot. I always just want to be like, "Grandma, you understand me because it's also you. Like this is it's hereditary."
You're like that's just
with my whole heart. I love her, and I do consider her one of my best friends. I really do. I love my grandma, my dad's mom. I absolutely love her, but it's because she gets me, and I'm like, "Grandma, you totally have inattentive ADHD to an extent too, the restlessness." And so that what you're describing is like the cricketing. It's for me, I just rub my feet together, which is like
my cousin. Cricket. So I'll be having a sleepover with somebody when I was younger, and they'd be like, "Stop." Because it's
you
like,
just can't.
Yeah. Like you can hear that noise.
But you don't
it's dead
hear
silent in the room.
But you don't hear
doesn't, literally not at all. I do it to fall asleep.
Yes.
Like I need that stimulation to fall asleep because it's my brain needs nothing else.
Yes. Yeah. To you don't hear it. It totally is a subconscious thing to you where everybody else is going to hear it.
It's like the pen tapping.
Yes.
Right? Like I don't do that, but I know that
some people do
notice that they're doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad's a leg tapper. Hardcore.
Oh,
that guy's legs are always jiggling.
Yeah.
Like.
So for us doing something like that, playing with a fidget toy, it is our way to stay engaged. And so whenever teachers are stopping kids or somebody's in meetings, like, "What are you doing?" This is how I pay attention. This is so that my brain keeps working and it does stay engaged. This is what I have to do because you have so much pent up energy and because you're being forced to sit still for such a long period of time. That's like releasing a little bit of energy at a time. And so this is why they say for people, so to be like, just to be transparent about stuff, like I have a dog and it is a medical dog. Part of it is he does very good for alerting me with my heart stuff. Like when my stress levels go up, he alerts me because that's when I start to have heart issues, but very much so for my ADHD. And now medical dog for ADHD isn't definitely not for everybody, but for me, it's definitely worked and it's been huge and beneficial. And one of it is because he is a beagle. And so he loves going for runs.
Right.
It burns off his,
it
burns off his energy. It burns off my energy. And that's why working out in the morning for people with ADHD is so good because you burn off some of that built up energy for a bit, first thing in the morning. And then you're like good to go the rest of the day. And I definitely can tell days where I do work out in the morning versus days that I don't. I feel way better because again, you can feel that pent up energy. You can feel like the tension in your back. It's your body just holds on to that energy in different places. Read the Body Keeps Score. It's a fairly popular book or becoming a fairly popular book about how throughout your life, different things, different traumas, whatever that happened to you, your body hangs on to that and you have to deal with that or else it keeps score. It keeps in there and built up energy around your body. I mean, energy can't be created nor destroyed, and so it's got to go somewhere. And it's
inflammation, the root of all evil.
Yeah, right. And so sitting there and running in the morning gets rid of it and stuff because it helps with that restlessness throughout the day. And then just breaking up periods of restlessness. Like I know if I've had a particularly long meeting and then I have to go into another meeting, people are like, "Oh, do you want to sit down?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I physically cannot sit down because my body starts to hurt." It starts to, because I gotta move. It starts to
I think that's why too I knew I would never be able to work at just a desk forever.
Yeah.
I like that my job requires me to be up and down and up and down and up and down. It's pretty conducive to the way my mental state needs to be.
Yeah. All right, so the next one here, interrupting or talking excessively. Haha, welcome to our podcast.
As we do it, at least we're fine. Like that's the blessing is once you can find somebody that you vibe with.
Oh yeah, that gets you. Yeah.
It's your pass, right? We can constantly interrupt each other. I'm never mad that you interrupt. No. It literally doesn't even cross my mind to be upset that you've interrupted me.
Never. And the number of times that as I'm editing our episodes that I'll have to delete parts that you say or that I say, and then I have to pick who's going to talk in this section because one, it's overlap because there's a delay. And so we can't hear each other in live time or in person, but yeah, it's never, and again, it's because we get each other because we're like, okay, I know if I don't say this, I'm gonna forget it.
Yeah, and it's never malicious. It's not that I don't respect you. It has nothing to do with respect, guys. If somebody's interrupting you, it probably isn't for that.
Yes. So what's actually happening in the ADHD brain whenever this impulsivity with everything else? All right, a big part of it has to do with impulse control, which we've talked about, or just like the general like brain gatekeeper, essentially. So in a neurotypical brain, that prefrontal cortex, again, acts as a filter, helping decide, it's that break, helping decide which thoughts are okay to say out loud and which maybe stay in the brain for at least a little bit. But for those of us with ADHD, this filter isn't as strong or fully present, we can say it. So on top of that, ADHD brains are wired to grab onto what feels rewarding right now. So when something exciting or thought pops into our head, or again, with this one, I feel like this one's overlooked medically, like professionally, I should say, because a big one for this one is connection. So a lot of times it's that impulsivity because you have something that can relate to somebody else. So think about this as your childhood. All those times you're told, people that you're told you're wrong, what you're doing is incorrect, that seeps into your friendships. So I always say, especially like I see it with my son, it was true for me as a kid. People with ADHD we're great at making friends, but we're horrible at keeping friends just because of how our brains work. So again, why have Laura and I been friends for so long? Because let's say whenever we did take a break, we would maybe talk to each other, shoot a message like once every month or so to be like, hey, you good? Yep, good. Okay. And that was it. Like,
we can exist without one another, but we like it when we're in touch.
Yes. Yeah. And so because of the connection, a lot of times whenever we blurt out a thought, that's our way of connecting. And that's the dopamine is, oh, you're saying something. I have something that relates to that.
1,000%.
Yes.
Right? That's this whole podcast episode, guys. As long as this is going, I'm sure you can hear in our voices that we're both getting more and more excited as we're talking to each other because we're like, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And we're connecting all these lines to each other.
Yeah.
It's not even, and it's the same way when somebody with ADHD, some people I think see it as, there certainly are people that are like one-uppers, right?
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
This.
Yeah, they think it's a one-upping thing, and it's
right.
not. It's definitely not.
There are some people who who do it as a bragging thing, but the rest of us, if you bring up the fact that your house was on fire, I would be like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. One time, and then I am literally just throwing out a line. My brain sees empathy. The lines.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way exactly. The way I show empathy is showing that I have been through something. I get it. I make the connection.
Yeah.
I'm not dismissing what you're going through at all.
Yeah.
I am simply saying
this
I
is
get
where
it because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how I can meet you where you are so that we can make that connection so that if you do need to vent, if you do need to talk, I've been through that. I might not understand it completely because I'm not in your shoes currently, but this is what I've been through and maybe we can meet in the middle. And so a lot of times for people, one, it's that, hey, I'm either going to say this now or else I'm going to forget it. Or two, for us, the dopamine hit is the connection is, I'm quick to make friends, hard to hold on to them and that's kind of like the benefit. And that's what I tell my son all the time. The benefit of being an adult with ADHD is you do find those lifelong friends because you do find people that get you and understand you. You have much deeper relationships as an adult because the friends that do stick around are the ones that you truly want to have around.
Well, and that's where my personality, my ADHD is kept in check in that way. One of my other strengths is the fact that I like to collect things, which is both information and relationships. I make friends and I have friends that I've collected through my life and I constantly reach out to people because that's I need the feel. I like to surround myself.
Yeah.
But it is those people. Like, if you look at my friend group, we're all a bunch of weird nerds.
Yeah.
Which is because we all get each other.
Yeah, you get each other. Yeah. And so this one can definitely be hard. And I will say, my boyfriend, shout out to the squirrel guy again, he is very, very good at this because in the past, like we said before, somebody either thinks you're one-upping them, interrupting you, or they'll either entertain you and then they hold on to that regret that they know that you're always going to interrupt them and they look at it as malicious when it's not.
Right, yeah.
He's very good with saying, hold on, let me finish, and then we'll come back. And he smirks. So I know he knows that this is just how I am. Yeah, but because he is neurotypical, he does remember whenever he's done, he doesn't just say, okay, now what were you going to say? And kind of act annoyed about it, which has been almost all of my romantic relationships. It's almost like an annoyance of like, all right, now what were you going to say? Well, I don't remember now.
Yeah.
Because I'm forgetful. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But he's amazing at where he frames it. Okay, I was talking about XYZ and you started to say, and then he'll be like, continue. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So he's like amazing.
Yeah, help me pick up that thread again.
Yeah. Where listen, you could just say, hold on, we'll circle back to that. And then by the time you're like, okay, what were you going to say? I'm like, I don't know.
I think it's gone. Because my brain, if you let that strand go, it's because I have prioritized the conversation that I'm listening to.
Yes,
so I'm going to listen
100%.
to it with my whole being because
Yes.
everything else in me is thinking about running
Yes.
brain-wise.
Yes.
So then you're like, that thread is
It's gone.
gone. I let it go.
It's gone. Yeah. And
because
so,
I had to, because my hands are full listening to what you're saying.
yes. Yeah. And so he's been amazing because I know the smirk that he gives because it's almost constant where he's like, hang on, because he wants, and rightfully so, like he should finish what he's saying. He's the one talking. And
right. This is where I was talking about. I'm sure Laura is going to be very similar to me and Justin. And I want her to know that there are times when it is going to be considered inappropriate.
Yes. It should bounce back and forth. It should bounce back and forth. But there are times where you are truly just interrupting. Yeah. And that's whenever I am actually interrupting, because I'll just be like, oh, and then he'll be like, hang on. That's all. Yeah, right. That's all I ever get out. Oh, hey, this one. And he'll be like, hold on. And he smirks because he just knows me, but he's so patient and so sweet about it. But again, the key is that he at least has the memory long enough to be like, okay, I started saying this and you started to say this. Go ahead and continue. Whereas I'm like, again, like you said, if it was up to us, like that thread would have already been like long gone a long time ago. So that definitely has its challenges. We're going to go into real briefly, because I know we've kept you guys a long time, but we're going to go into some of the positives. Because again, a lot of these seem like negatives, but I want to go into the positives.
Right, and we keep talking about our struggles, but we both have, like we said at the beginning,
positives.
We found a lot of workarounds.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. Like I'm no regrets.
Yeah. And these are skimming the surface of the positives, because the older I'm getting, the more accepting I'm getting of different things of my ADHD, the more I'm learning, especially within the workplace. All right. You don't have to be good at everything. And I think that's something our society gets wrong often. You don't have to be good at everything. Find your niche and really lean into that. And a lot of the things that I'm really good at within my niche is my ADHD, because oftentimes there's so many people who are like, don't make ADHD your entire personality. Well, guess what? It is. Like, it is my personality.
That's like a really weird thing to say, because it truly is your personality.
It is. It really is.
That's your brain, dude.
It's your brain. Yeah. And things like anxiety, depression, you might not want it to be all about, but like ADHD comes with some really, really big perks, whereas like anxiety, I would say
that's only negative.
Yeah.
Besides like when you have to survive.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. The perk of it is survival. And unfortunately, nowadays, for the most part, you don't have to constantly be in a fight or flight response, where back whenever humans were first evolving, that was a huge benefit, was to be anxious, to be constantly on alert. Not so much anymore. But with ADHD, there are some really, really, really cool positives. And so one of the first things I want to talk about, the out of the world creativity. We're literally wired to constantly be thinking outside the box. We're
making connections.
Yep. Constantly bouncing between ideas and connections. And we often end up with unique insights or creative solutions that most of the time others completely miss. And it's almost like, think of having a constant active idea factory. The number of companies and ideas and products brains that I've had, I was like one, that is how my ADHD brain works, but I would be a billionaire by now. I guarantee it. If I also didn't have if I could just have
next function.
I can't do the function to make it all happen. But the number of ideas that I constantly come up with when I share them with people, they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm like, I know, because it's my brain. But things like coming up with podcast ideas, coming up with creative ideas just in general. That's why so many people with ADHD they're musicians, they're artists of some sort. It's because that creativity, the out of the box, we're natural storytellers.
I was just about, that's what I think is the problem. And that's because that's my leading strength of my personality type, is that I'm a fantastic storyteller, because I am able to connect the lines for people that, like the dots, I can easily connect dots that people cannot see.
So that's my next one.
I remember everything about things. So like I can weave. I'm a good weaver.
So that's my next one, is pattern recognition. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And this is, I would say, yes, I'm creative, but I'm creative because I have insane pattern recognition. And if you're ADHD and you're looking for something to put on your resume, pattern recognition, dude.
Game, dude. That connections game.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect for somebody with ADHD.
Right? And so ADHD brains are fantastic at spotting patterns and making connection where others just see complete randomness. It all makes sense to us. It's like we have a built-in radar for seeing relationships between things, which makes us great at everything from problem solving to analyzing complex information. Especially like if we were saying earlier, if it's new, boom. If you're at a workplace right now and you're a manager and you have a hard problem to solve, you're like, man, this is complex. It has so many moving pieces to it. give it to your ADHD person because they will figure it out because their pattern recognition is insane. It's also why you'll hear your ADHD friend often predicts the ending of a movie. That's pattern recognition for sure.
Puzzle solving.
Yes, right. It's just constant in our head puzzles all the time.
And I like problems.
Yeah.
I like a good challenge.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and because, again, it's that dopamine hit for us. This is complex. Nobody else can do it. I can absorb it. I'm already seeing these patterns easily. I don't know why you guys can't see all these connections. And that's also why you'll hear a lot of people with ADHD, they'll say their intuition, their gut. This is typically it. People with ADHD take in so much more external stimuli than someone that's neurotypical. From day to day, everybody takes in a lot of information that you don't realize. It's in your subconscious. Yeah. ADHD people take in a lot more than that. And it's just within our subconscious, it's sorting and pattern recognition and sorting all these things to have it make sense. And if you have an ADHD friend who is, my gut intuition is this, typically you should probably trust them because it's typically going to be spot on. And they might not be able to fully explain it. That's the one thing that meds do for me versus me on ADHD meds versus me not on ADHD meds. The meds help me to organize and be able to articulate those thoughts. So I can now say, okay, this is why. And I can, for the most part, explain the pattern recognition to other people. Not all the times. Other times I'm just like, this makes sense. And they're like, well, why? I'm like, I don't know. It just does. You're just going to have to trust me on this one.
My third Clifton Strengths thing is strategic, which is always having at least 3 options so you can change. Oh, yeah. I feel like we're very flexible people.
Yes. Very, very much so. Very, very much so.
Although there are different spectrums of ADHD where some people, you might be flexible, but some people hate change. Like some ADHD, there's a lot of people that like classic ADHD, you're like, I hate change.
Yeah.
Because you're comfortable and you've made your SOPs and like, do not pull me out of that.
And there's a lot of overlap. Another huge comorbid one is autism with ADHD. And so the autism side of the ADHD that can very much, they overlap is, and that was one thing I was going to say earlier and I forgot to, but people don't think you're paying attention because you don't make eye contact. That's very much so an ADHD and an autism thing. It's not that we're not paying attention. It's just eye contact is extremely uncomfortable. I can't explain it. It just very, 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 very much so is.
Well, I think it's because for me, sometimes I'm overanalyzing it, right? I'm looking at them too long. I'm looking at them too long.
Am I looking in one eyeball or both eyeballs? How do you look in one eyeball?
It's too much. It's
That's that scene from Moana whenever the crab is at the bottom and he's like, choose an eye, pick an eye, and he's like switching. I'm constantly running through that in my brain. How do you look at 2 eyes at the same time? You can't. You can only focus on one thing. So that's constantly going through my brain. So it's just let's just avoid that altogether. Another one is hyperfocus. Like Laura was talking about, like she has extreme focus. I can if I'm like super, super into it. So I said about how I had the flu and I beat Red Dead Redemption 2 in one weekend. In less than a day, I learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube because I was like, I'm going to do this. My son was like, I want to learn how to solve this. I'm like, I can do this.
And hyperfixate on topics. Yes. And I can tell you a lot about a lot of different topics.
Hello, podcast.
I like to dive in. Yeah.
Right. All of this. I would say one time, I think I told this in the brains episode too. We were going to Florida once and I was like, you know what? I really want to saltwater fish. I learned so much about saltwater fishing. We went saltwater fishing from a dock one time, but I guarantee you, I know way more about saltwater fishing than 90% of the people out there because I binge dump,
dive in.
Yes. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it. We talk about all the fun hobby and stuff like this, but it also translates to, okay, if you're in the workplace, and again, people with ADHD, you got to have an ADHD friendly job to some extent, or else it's just a struggle.
The time management and the organization will totally eat you alive if you're in the wrong environment.
Yes. Yeah.
If you do not have a flexible workplace,
you're done for.
It's not going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, one of these things, hyperfocus, was we were talking about one day at work, how funny it would be if we could create an animated video about a little pile of poo that went through the wastewater system. And we were like, oh man, too bad none of us know how to do cartoon animation. I'm like, not right now we do, but give me a day or two. And sure enough, a week later, we had a whole little animated video about this little pile of poo, full on narration that sounds like a British wildlife documentary. narration. And did I know how to do this before? Nope, but now I do. And it's the same thing with drawing. Like I said, I've always wanted to draw. I started drawing with my son last fall for some kids' YouTube videos. Shout out to the Art Hub for Kids, I think it's called. Amazing. Now I can draw, which is, again, there is nothing, I don't want to say like worse, but ChatGPT has probably been the best and the worst thing for somebody with ADHD, because it has allowed me to bring my brain to life. Whereas my things that have stopped me before is I don't know how to do that. Like, you know, it would be really cool if I could do this, or if I could scrape the internet for this information, put it on an Excel spreadsheet, but there's no way that I know how to do that. I could put that into ChatGPT. It can help give me step-by-step information. ChatGPT has unleashed my brain, and I'm just like, this is so good and so bad at the same time. Because if somebody's going to take over the world, it'd probably be somebody with ADHD, like for the better. Probably. Like just because of just like the craziness of if we put our mind to something, it's all or none.
You're all in. And that's the other thing that I think is a real asset is most of us are very passionate.
Very
people.
Passionate.
Because, right, you were saying earlier, we have big emotions because we have impulse control.
Yep.
So when you have an emotion, you have an emotion fully. Yeah. It's hard to regulate those emotions. So for the good or for bad, you're passionate.
Yep.
Which can make you a true friend.
Yes. Yeah. So if I like you and you're in my life daily, it's because I actually care about you. Or if I like know you and I just don't talk to you that often, again, ADHD, out of sight, out of mind, is unfortunately the same thing with people, and it sucks. But if you're around, I'm completely loyal and diehard in that manner. Another one, again, I only have a few more here, but another one that strength is because of everything else we've noticed is most people are very skilled in emergencies. This is a very strong one for me too. I'm on the emergency response team for my city because this is where I thrive, because I finally feel like the rest of the world is finally at the right speed for me and everything that's going around. So when there's 1,000 things that are going on, I can say, yes, I can see these patterns that are happening because of this problem, because of this thing. I can see the domino effects of what's going to happen. I'm pretty good at predicting what's going to happen down the road, whereas other people might not see it. I can not only see it, but go ahead and fix problems and everything for down the road, because again, emergencies, everybody else is finally keeping up with me. I want to have an SOP. I want to have it written down because I don't want to forget things, because I want to be good in an emergency because I know I'm strong.
The idea of organizational processes.
Oh my gosh.
It's just hard to do them.
Yeah. Another one, the last two, curiosity and open-mindedness. And this one kind of goes hand with the last one, is empathy and intuition. So curiosity is because our brains thrive on novelty and discovery. So we're always exploring, always learning, always questioning, so this means that we're going to be lifelong learners who are always eager to dive into new ideas, meet new people, try new things. So again, if you're like a spouse, if you're like, this marriage or whatever this relationship's getting boring, unleash your ADHD partner, because they'll make it fun. They'll think of something to do.
I was like the queen of inventing games as a kid.
Oh, heck yeah.
Because I could just make something up on the fly.
Constantly, yeah. There's no ending to the limit of like where our brain can go constantly. And then Laura was saying too, the empathy and intuition. Again, we feel everything so much deeper. So whenever it's I like you, it's I like you. Like again, pattern recognition. I see what you're doing. I see what you're saying. And the intuition too, like we were talking about like picking up on external stimuli. Like I can tell somebody if their facial expressions have changed from 5 minutes ago. And then I'm immediately like, what's wrong? And they're like, nothing.
You're so much better about, that is not where my ADHD excels.
Ooh, that's mine,
I am more wrapped up in my internal stimuli than my external stimuli. Yeah. So you've always been great at like reading people and noticing when things are off, which would make you such a good detective.
Yeah.
Whereas I am very good at noticing what people have said.
Yes.
But I am not good at reading people's faces and feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ADHD cocktail, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, you find your other neurotypical friends, but you're not going to be the same. ADHD is different challenges and different assets in different situations too, right? Like an ADHD parent, having ADHD as a parent, having ADHD as a child, having ADHD as a supervisor. In many different situations, you need to pull on different tools if you have ADHD, because you're going to be in different circumstances requiring different things.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. And if you do have ADHD, on all of our episodes, you can hit on the send us a text thing. I have a bunch of resources through my company that I can send you. Task management. I made a whole, again, thank you, ChatGPT. I made a whole Excel thing on how to prioritize tasks. It is, first of all, phenomenal. I gave it to a bunch of other people to be like, hey, can you try this out for me? And they're like, wow, this is super helpful. They might not use it because they're not ADHD, but for somebody like me who really struggles with prioritizing tasks and how to put things in order, I have this whole spreadsheet developed that you answer 5 quick questions about this thing, and then it prioritizes them and then dumps them into buckets of you should complete these things this week. You should complete these things in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and it prioritizes things.
That's
by
really
like.
Good. I should jump on that. I was. Just
I'll send it to you
this week.
I'll send it to you.
I think the last thing before letting anybody go is, although executive dysfunction is a thing, and of course you're going to have harder weeks than others, you do have to advocate for yourself.
100%.
At some point, right?
Yeah.
There are the workarounds and there are the tools to do it, but you have to come and look for those things.
Yeah. You have to come ready to at least
although this can't just be everybody else has to change for me.
Yeah. Because everybody has to function together. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the biggest thing is if you're the ADHD person, we are constantly being forced to live in a world that does not work for us and against us. But the reality is this is what we have to do. Like, this is just how the world is.
It's not even about, and it's not that we shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But to a point.
To a point, yes, but to a point we have to. Like, it just is.
Right.
And
you can make life easier for your neurotypical friends, your neurotypical children, your neurotypical spouses. But in society as a whole, we have to work within the parameters that we're given.
Yeah. And it goes both ways too. Again, if you are neurotypical, just having the patience, and the biggest thing is like the curiosity. If there's something that you don't understand, find the balance of, okay, I'm going to ask why, and your neurodivergent, whatever, friend, spouse, whatever, is going to do their best to try and explain it. And if they can't, just ask yourself, is this something that I can just let them do their thing? Is this going to be helpful to them? Or is this something that like it really bothers you too? Because again, it's finding that balance. And so,
yes, because you can have those hard conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, although this is considered a disability, right?
Yes.
Like it is.
No, it is. It's recognized by ADA.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like you can ask for accommodations.
Yep.
But at the same time, you can ask those questions. Maybe not in the workplace if you're a supervisor or your subordinate, but you can ask your friends, you can ask your spouse, you can ask your partners. Have those difficult. Don't beat around the bush.
Yeah, just
please.
ask.
Just ask.
Yep.
Or if it is a problem, let us know.
Yes.
Like it's a problem. Because truly, it never occurred to me as a kid that the interrupting thing was a problem until I got told over and over and over again eventually. But some things, I'm not registering that as a problem because it's not a problem for me.
Yes. Yeah. Because you're already dealing with 100,000 things in your own brain that it's hard to remember that there's other things going on outside because it's just too overwhelming. Again, if you're neurotypical and you're like, you just think the ADHD is like the impulsivity and that kind of stuff. No, it's think of it it's a completely different mindset, and that's a little bit of an easier way to describe it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. Well, make sure that you go and like us and support us on Patreon, because then we can keep bringing you just random discussions like this.
Yeah. And our goal is 2 more episodes for the season,
Yep.
1 mini, 1 regular. Keep tuning in, and then we'll take a holiday break and bring you more content.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.